Do you realize that your own mouth is making you look dumber every single day? Yes, you heard that right. Every unnecessary word, every impulsive reply, every attempt to prove yourself through endless talking, it's all working against you. You think speaking more makes you look smarter? Wrong. It does the opposite. The world is filled with people who talk too much, too fast, and about things they barely understand. They believe words equal power. But here's the truth. Silence is the real power. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful emperor of Rome, understood this over 2,000 years ago. He didn't rule by shouting orders or arguing with fools. He ruled with strategic silence, controlled speech, and an iron mind. He knew that the moment you stop talking, you start thinking. And the moment you start thinking, you start winning. So why do fools talk endlessly while the wise remain silent? And how can you master the art of silence to gain respect, influence, and mental clarity? Stay with me, because what you're about to learn might just change your life forever. 1. Why talking too much makes you look foolish. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Spend more time in silence. This will keep you from regretting your words." He understood something most people never grasp. The more you talk, the less powerful you become. You may think that speaking frequently makes you look intelligent, but in reality, the opposite is true. The more words you spill carelessly, the more mistakes you make, the more weaknesses you reveal, and the less seriously people take you. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics knew centuries ago. Studies show that people who talk excessively are more likely to contradict themselves, expose their insecurities, and lose credibility in the eyes of others. When someone dominates a conversation, their words become white noise, ignored, dismissed, and ultimately forgotten. True intelligence isn't measured by how much you say, but by how precisely and effectively you communicate your thoughts. Cicero, one of the greatest orators of ancient Rome, learned this lesson the hard way. He was a man who believed in the power of words, so much so that he thought his mastery of rhetoric could protect him. As political tensions in Rome escalated, he launched relentless verbal attacks on Mark Antony, delivering speeches that ridiculed and humiliated him. Cicero thought that if he could dominate the public sphere with his voice, he could shape Rome's future. But he underestimated a brutal reality. Words are only powerful when used wisely. Talking too much, especially in the wrong circumstances, can be fatal. While Cicero spoke endlessly, Antony moved in silence. He formed alliances, consolidated power, and patiently waited. In the end, when Antony and Octavian secured their control over Rome, Cicero's words became meaningless. He had spoken too much, for too long, and against the wrong people. When Antony sent his men to capture him, Cicero could not talk his way out of it. His head and hands, symbols of his words and writing, were cut off and displayed in the Roman Forum as a chilling warning. Those who cannot control their tongues will eventually be silenced by others. This historical tragedy reveals a truth that extends beyond the Roman Republic. Those who talk too much expose their weaknesses without realizing it. Every unnecessary word is a potential mistake. Every excessive opinion, a potential liability. People who dominate conversations may feel powerful, but in reality, they are giving away their influence. The more predictable you are, the less respect you command. If you observe the world's most powerful figures, you will notice a pattern. The most respected individuals are not the ones constantly fighting for attention, but those who remain composed, choose their words wisely, and make every sentence count. Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors of all time, is known for speaking sparingly. Elon Musk, despite leading multiple billion-dollar companies, rarely gives long-winded speeches. These individuals understand that silence creates an air of mystery and control. When they do speak, people listen. Compare that to those who cannot control their urge to speak. We all know someone who dominates conversations, constantly interrupts, and overshares. These individuals often think they are impressing others, but in reality they are doing the opposite. People grow tired of their constant talking. They start tuning them out. They become background noise. Over time, excessive talkers develop a reputation, not for their intelligence, but for their inability to stop forcing their opinions into every discussion. There is another layer to this. Talking too much prevents deep thinking. Every time you impulsively respond to a situation, you rob yourself of the opportunity to process and refine your thoughts. When Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome, he faced constant political pressure. Yet, instead of reacting immediately, he practiced a habit that few leaders had mastered, the power of the pause. He would remain silent in moments of tension, using his internal stillness to assess the situation before speaking. This allowed him to control his emotions, make wiser decisions, and maintain his authority without ever needing to raise his voice. Imagine a moment where you feel the urge to defend yourself, prove your intelligence, or counter someone's argument. Instead of reacting instantly, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, is this necessary? Will my words add value? 9 times out of 10, the answer will be no. And when you do choose to speak, your words will carry 10 times more impact. This is why the greatest warriors, philosophers, and leaders in history have mastered the art of restraint. The ability to hold one's tongue in a world that constantly demands attention is a sign of self-mastery. It is why the most powerful people do not waste time arguing with fools, because they understand that wisdom is not proven through endless words, but through decisive action and controlled speech. Talking less is not about becoming passive. It is about gaining control. The next time you find yourself about to speak impulsively, stop. Observe. Let silence do the work for you. And when you do speak, make sure that every word is worth listening to. For the next 7 days, practice the rule of 3 before speaking. Before every response, take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself whether what you are about to say is truly necessary or if silence would serve you better. Consider whether this is the right time for your words to be heard, or if holding back would create a stronger presence. Think about whether the person you are speaking to is the right audience for your thoughts, or if they would be wasted on someone who will not appreciate their value. If any of these reflections suggest hesitation, choose silence. If you are certain your words will add meaning, deliver them with clarity and purpose. By practicing this consistently, you will notice your speech becoming more intentional, your presence more commanding, and your respect among others growing stronger. Because in a world full of noise, those who master silence hold the real power. 2. Silence gives you control over your emotions. The person who cannot control their tongue cannot control their emotions. The more you talk, the easier it is for others to provoke you, manipulate you, and push you into making decisions you will later regret. Words are tied to emotions, and emotions, when unchecked, are the greatest source of weakness. Those who lack the discipline of silence often find themselves reacting instead of thinking, arguing instead of observing, and regretting instead of mastering. Marcus Aurelius, the last of the 5 good emperors, understood this principle better than anyone. As the most powerful man in Rome, he was constantly surrounded by political intrigue, betrayal, and personal attacks. Yet, unlike those who fell into the trap of emotional outbursts, he maintained his composure. His secret was simple but profound. He did not let his enemies dictate his reactions. He remained silent when others expected him to lash out. He controlled his speech, and by doing so, he controlled his emotions. In contrast, his own son, Commodus, was the exact opposite. Commodus, who inherited the empire from his father, was impulsive, reckless, and incapable of restraint. He allowed his emotions to rule him, lashing out at those who opposed him, speaking without thinking, and ultimately creating enemies that would later betray him. His downfall was not due to a lack of power or resources, but because he lacked control over himself. Where Marcus ruled with wisdom and restraint, Commodus ruled with arrogance and emotion, leading to his eventual assassination. This contrast between father and son teaches a powerful lesson. Those who master silence master themselves, and those who speak without thought become slaves to their emotions. The Stoics believed that the ability to remain silent in moments of emotional intensity was a sign of true power. A man who cannot stay silent when provoked is not in control of himself. He is merely reacting to the world around him, like a puppet being pulled by strings. Silence is the key to emotional control because it forces you to pause. When you do not immediately respond to an insult, a heated argument, or a moment of frustration, you create space between the stimulus and your reaction. This space is where clarity is found. It allows logic to override impulse, discipline to override chaos, and intelligence to override ego. When you remain silent, you take away the fuel that ignites further conflict. Your opponent expects a reaction. When they do not get one, they lose their power over you. In modern times, people fall into emotional traps more than ever. Social media, news cycles, and constant digital engagement have conditioned people to react instantly. Someone insults you online, you respond immediately. Someone questions your beliefs. You argue back without hesitation, but those who are ruled by their emotions are the easiest to manipulate. Politicians, advertisers, and influencers rely on emotional reactions to keep people engaged, angry, and distracted. The more you react without thinking, the more you play into their hands. A person who can control their emotions through silence is untouchable. Imagine a heated argument where one person keeps shouting, trying to provoke a reaction, while the other remains calm and composed. Who looks stronger? Who appears more powerful? The one who stays silent holds the upper hand, because they are not allowing the other person to dictate their emotions. This is why silence is feared. It is not weakness. It is an unshakable shield against manipulation. The next time you feel anger rising inside you, do not speak. Pause. Breathe. Count backward from 10. Observe your emotions instead of reacting to them. Notice how they come and go like waves, intense for a moment, then fading into nothing. If you had spoken at the height of your anger, you might have said something you would regret. But by remaining silent, you reclaim control over your own mind. The Stoics understood that emotions are fleeting, but words are permanent. A single moment of unchecked speech can destroy a relationship, ruin a reputation, or create a lasting regret. But silence gives you time. Silence protects you from acting on temporary emotions with permanent consequences. Emotional control is not about suppressing feelings, but about choosing when and how to express them. A man who controls his words is a man who controls himself, and a man who controls himself cannot be controlled by anyone else. Those who talk too much are like a fire that rages out of control, consuming everything in its path, including themselves. Those who master silence are like a steady flame, burning with intensity, but never wavering, never losing control. In the end, silence is not about avoiding confrontation or suppressing your voice. It is about strategic restraint. It is about understanding that not every battle needs to be fought, and not every provocation deserves a reaction. It is about knowing that the most powerful person in the room is not the one who speaks the loudest, but the one who speaks the least, because they are in full control of themselves. If you can master silence in moments of emotional intensity, you will master yourself. And when you master yourself, nothing and no one can control you. For the next 7 days, whenever you feel the urge to react emotionally, stop. Instead of responding immediately, breathe in deeply, hold for a moment, and let the initial wave of emotion pass. Observe it like an outsider, without attachment. Recognize that it is just a temporary state, not your identity. If you must respond, do so with deliberation, not impulse. Keep a journal and note each moment where you practiced this restraint. See how many conflicts dissolve on their own. See how much calmer and more in control you feel. Master silence, and you will master your emotions. Master your emotions, and you will master your life. 3. Silence commands respect. There is something undeniably powerful about a person who speaks less, but commands attention when they do. In any room, the one who listens more than they talk often holds the most influence. They are not trying to prove their intelligence or dominate conversations with noise. Instead, they observe, they calculate, and when they speak, every word carries weight. This is the essence of real power, when you do not need to demand respect, because it is already given to you. The loudest person in the room is rarely the one with authority. The ones who are truly respected do not seek validation through constant speech. They let their presence, their actions, and their carefully chosen words do the talking for them. The modern world worships those who are constantly speaking, whether on social media, in meetings, or in everyday conversations. But the truth is, the most influential people in history have mastered the art of strategic silence. When you think of figures who shaped history, who comes to mind? Great leaders, brilliant minds, and respected visionaries all share one thing in common: they spoke only when necessary. A striking example of this is Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. Unlike his predecessor Steve Jobs, who was known for his bold, often aggressive speaking style, Cook leads with quiet authority. He does not fill the air with unnecessary words. He does not try to impress with elaborate speeches or exaggerated emotions. Instead, when he speaks, people listen, not because he is loud, but because his words are deliberate. Every statement he makes is measured, precise, and impactful. This level of restraint and control over speech creates an aura of respect and mystery, making him one of the most influential business leaders in the world. Why does this approach work? Because scarcity creates value. When something is rare, it becomes more desirable. The same principle applies to speech. If you speak all the time, your words lose their impact. But if you speak only when necessary, people start paying attention. They lean in when you talk. They value your input more because it is not given freely. There is another psychological element at play. Silence creates authority. People naturally assume that the one who listens more and speaks less knows something they do not. This is why in negotiations, the one who speaks the least has the most power. Their silence forces the other party to reveal more, to feel the need to fill the void. The moment you control your words, you control the room. Imagine two scenarios. In the first, someone talks endlessly, explaining their ideas in every possible way, trying to make their point louder and clearer. In the second, another person listens, waits, and then delivers one sharp, decisive statement. Who will be remembered? The one who speaks constantly fades into the background. The one who speaks sparingly stands out. This is why some of the most respected individuals in any field, whether in business, politics, or personal life, are those who have mastered the balance between speaking and silence. They know that people value what is not easily available. Their words are like precious currency, spent wisely rather than thrown away carelessly. The mistake most people make is thinking that talking more will earn them more respect. They try to sound smart, to prove their worth through words, but this often has the opposite effect. The more you talk, the more you reveal, not just your thoughts, but your doubts, your insecurities, your need for approval. Those who are truly confident in themselves do not feel the need to over-explain or to prove themselves through excessive speech. One of the best ways to practice this principle in daily life is through the 50% rule. In every conversation, say only half of what you normally would. Instead of rushing to respond, pause. Let the silence sit for a moment. Observe how others react. You will start to notice something interesting. When you speak less, people listen more. They become more curious about what you have to say. They start to respect your words more because they are not given away carelessly. Try this for a week. In meetings, social gatherings, or even one-on-one conversations, cut your speech by half. Instead of filling silences, embrace them. Instead of speaking to fill space, speak only when you have something valuable to contribute. Observe how people's perception of you changes. You will notice that they start paying closer attention to your words. They will ask you for your opinion more, rather than you having to force it into the conversation. You will begin to notice that those who talk endlessly often say very little, while those who choose their words wisely are the ones who hold true influence. Speaking less is not about becoming invisible. It is about becoming undeniably powerful. Those who understand this principle naturally command respect without ever having to ask for it. When you learn to control your words, you learn to control how the world perceives you. 4. Silence gives you an advantage in arguments and negotiations. Words are weapons, but only when they are used with precision. In any debate, negotiation, or conflict, the person who speaks the most is rarely the one in control. Those who dominate discussions with endless arguments often believe they are proving their intelligence, but in reality, they are revealing their emotions, exposing their weaknesses, and handing power to their opponent. The smartest individuals do not rush to speak. They allow silence to work for them, giving them time to think, analyze, and control the flow of the conversation. Marcus Aurelius mastered this strategy, not just as a Stoic philosopher, but as an emperor constantly facing political intrigue and warfare. Unlike his enemies, who used words recklessly in an attempt to outmaneuver him, Marcus Aurelius knew that true power lay in restraint. He listened carefully, letting his opponents reveal their intentions, their biases, and their weaknesses. He was never the first to speak in a debate. He was always the last. Instead of countering attacks with emotional rebuttals, he responded with calculated, probing questions, questions that forced his adversaries to expose the flaws in their own arguments. By staying silent, he controlled not only the conversation, but also the perceptions of those around him. This technique is timeless. Modern leaders, negotiators, and master communicators all use the same strategy. The best lawyers, for example, do not interrupt when a witness or opponent is speaking. They let them talk, let them over-explain, let them contradict themselves. Every word spoken unnecessarily is a potential mistake, a clue, a weakness waiting to be used against them. The best negotiators create discomfort with their silence, making the other party anxious to fill the void. They listen, they observe, and when they do speak, their words are sharp, decisive, and impossible to ignore. Most people struggle with silence because they feel the need to defend themselves immediately. When challenged, their instinct is to react, to prove their point, to assert dominance. But the need to speak quickly is a sign of insecurity. It reveals an emotional attachment to the argument rather than logical control over it. The most powerful individuals understand that the best move in a debate is often not to speak at all, but to let the other person talk themselves into a corner. Imagine you are in a heated argument. The other person is throwing accusations, raising their voice, pushing for an immediate reaction. Instead of responding, you pause. You hold their gaze, but say nothing. The silence stretches, creating an uncomfortable tension. The longer you wait, the more the other person starts to doubt themselves. They begin to backtrack, over-explain, or lose confidence in their own words. This is the power of controlled silence. It forces the other person to reveal their true emotions, their level of certainty, and often their own mistakes. This technique works in negotiations as well. Salespeople often use it to pressure customers into making decisions. After presenting an offer, a skilled negotiator will not keep talking to justify their price. Instead, they remain silent, letting the customer sit with the discomfort of an unanswered question. The longer the silence stretches, the more likely the other party is to speak first, either agreeing or making a concession they wouldn't have made if the silence had been filled with unnecessary words. There is a psychological principle behind this called the power of the pause. People are uncomfortable with silence in conversations, especially in moments of tension. When there is a pause, they feel the need to fill it. Those who control silence in discussions control the psychological dynamic. They force the other party to speak first, to react emotionally, to reveal their position before committing to their own. One of the simplest ways to apply this in everyday life is to adopt the 3-second rule. In your next disagreement, negotiation, or intense conversation, do not respond immediately. When the other person finishes speaking, pause for 3 seconds before answering. This pause does 2 things. First, it gives you time to think and formulate a strategic response rather than reacting impulsively. Second, it makes the other person slightly uncomfortable, which often leads them to second-guess their position. If you master the ability to remain silent when under pressure, you will always hold the advantage. In every debate, the person who can remain composed will appear more intelligent, more in control, and more confident. The one who speaks the most is usually the one who feels they have something to prove. The one who speaks less but speaks with impact is the one who will be remembered. To put this into practice, in the next argument or negotiation you engage in, consciously control your speech. Resist the urge to speak first. Instead, listen fully, pause, and respond only when necessary. Observe how the other person reacts to silence. Watch how their words become less certain the longer they have to sit in the void of an unanswered statement. Notice how much more powerful your words become when they are not wasted. Silence is not just a defensive tool, it is an offensive strategy. It disarms opponents, forces deeper thought, and shifts control in any conversation. Those who master it hold the keys to persuasion, influence, and respect. Those who fail to control their tongue, on the other hand, are at the mercy of those who do. 5. Modern distractions make you forget the value of silence. Never before in human history have people been so obsessed with speaking their minds. Social media has turned the world into a battlefield of opinions, where silence is seen not as a strength, but as a weakness. The louder you are, the more engagement you get. The faster you react, the more relevant you appear. The more you post, the more visible you become. But what if all of this is a trap? The digital world encourages non-stop talking, but discourages deep thinking. People comment before they understand. They argue before they reflect. They voice opinions not because they are well-formed, but because they feel an urgency to be heard. And in this constant rush to express, they forget to listen to others, to reality, and most dangerously, to themselves. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, lived in an era without Twitter, TikTok, or Instagram. But if he had, what would he have done differently? Unlike most people today, he would not have wasted time reacting to every controversy, nor would he have spent his days arguing in endless digital debates. He would have used silence as his greatest weapon, practicing restraint in an environment that rewards impulsiveness. He would have observed, reflected, and spoken only when necessary, ensuring that his words were guided by wisdom rather than fleeting emotions. His personal writings, now known as meditations, reveal a man deeply committed to inner stillness, even in the chaos of ruling an empire. While others fought for attention and validation, he turned inward, questioning his own thoughts, training his mind, and refining his character. In today's world, where distractions are infinite, this practice is more essential than ever. Most people do not spend time in silence, not because they do not want to, but because they have forgotten how. The problem is not just the amount of noise, but what it does to the mind. When constantly bombarded with information, opinions, and digital interactions, people lose their ability to be alone with their thoughts. They become addicted to the external world, seeking validation in likes and shares rather than in personal growth and clarity. The result is a generation that talks more than ever, but understands less than ever. True wisdom is not found in the rapid exchange of opinions. It is found in the spaces between conversations, in the moments of stillness where deep thoughts can form. But modern life has made these moments rare. Instead of embracing silence, people fill every gap with scrolling, commenting, and reacting. Instead of sitting with their emotions, they distract themselves with endless streams of content. And instead of developing real understanding, they chase short-term stimulation, mistaking information overload for knowledge. If Marcus Aurelius were alive today, he would likely issue a challenge. Go an entire day without posting, commenting, or reacting on social media. Instead, observe. Pay attention to how often you feel the urge to speak. Notice the discomfort that arises when you are not filling the void with words. Then ask yourself, how much of what you wanted to say was actually necessary? How much of it was driven by impulse rather than insight? Most people will struggle with this exercise, not because it is difficult, but because it reveals an uncomfortable truth. Much of what they say is not essential. They speak because they fear being forgotten. They argue because they fear being wrong. They post because they fear being irrelevant. But a person who truly understands the power of silence does not fear any of these things. They do not need external validation because they have internal clarity. The challenge, then, is not just to reduce the noise, but to rediscover the depth of silence. Instead of reacting to every notification, take a moment to breathe. Instead of commenting on every topic, take time to reflect. Instead of constantly speaking, learn to listen, not just to others, but to yourself. Silence is not a sign of weakness in a digital age. It is a sign of mastery. The ability to remain still in a world that demands urgency is a superpower. The person who can resist the pull of distractions, who can detach from the endless cycle of digital noise, who can cultivate stillness amid the chaos, this person holds real power. Not the power of attention, but the power of control. Not the power of noise, but the power of wisdom. Spend one day in silence, away from the need to be seen, heard, or validated. Observe the world without engaging. See how much you notice when you are not trying to add to the noise. See how much clarity you gain when you step back. And most importantly, see how little of what you wanted to say was truly necessary. Because in a world that never stops talking, those who master silence are the ones who truly understand. 6. Silence makes you mysterious and attractive. In a world where everyone is eager to be heard, those who remain silent stand out. Mystery is power. The less you reveal, the more people want to know. The quieter you are, the more others lean in when you speak. This is the paradox of attraction. What is rare becomes valuable. Those who speak endlessly, explaining every thought, sharing every detail, and trying too hard to impress, quickly lose their allure. But those who withhold, who choose their words carefully, who allow silence to surround them, create an aura of intrigue that commands respect and fascination. History is filled with figures who understood this. Sun Tzu, the legendary Chinese military strategist and author of The Art of War, was a master of calculated silence. He knew that the greatest victories were won not through brute force, but through deception, patience, and restraint. He understood that the enemy who talks too much reveals his weaknesses, while the one who remains silent and observant controls the battlefield before the first strike is even made. His philosophy of warfare can be applied to everyday life. Those who reveal less hold the upper hand. Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest swordsman in Japanese history, lived by the same principle. He won over 60 duels, often against opponents who were technically more skilled, yet he never lost. His secret was not just his swordsmanship, but his ability to remain unreadable. He did not show his emotions. He did not speak unnecessarily. He let his opponents exhaust themselves with words, doubts, and assumptions, while he remained a silent force of absolute control. His book, The Book of Five Rings, emphasizes the power of restraint. not just in battle, but in all areas of life. His silence was his greatest psychological weapon. It made his enemies uncertain, hesitant, and ultimately weaker. This principle is not just for warriors or strategists. It is a tool for anyone who wants to command presence without having to demand it. The person who speaks less naturally draws attention. In a conversation, the one who listens more and speaks less holds more influence, because people instinctively sense that their words must be valuable if they do not give them away easily. The quiet person is not invisible, they are unforgettable. Think about the last time you met someone who hardly spoke, yet they left an impression on you. There is a reason for this. When someone does not overshare, your mind starts filling in the blanks. You wonder what they are thinking, what they know, what makes them so composed. This creates a psychological pull. Curiosity is a powerful force, and silence triggers it more than words ever could. The mistake most people make is thinking that talking more will make them seem more interesting. They try to impress with stories, opinions, and endless explanations. But real attraction, whether in personal relationships, business, or social interactions, comes from presence, not performance. The strongest energy in the room is not the one that is the loudest, but the one that is the most controlled. In practical terms, the next time you meet someone new, resist the urge to fill the silence with words just to keep the conversation going. Instead of trying to impress them with how much you know, let them wonder about you. Speak less, listen more. Observe how they react to your silence. Watch how they lean in, how they try to get more from you, how your words become more powerful because they are given sparingly. This is not about being cold or distant. It is about mastering the flow of communication. When you do speak, do so with intent. Every sentence should add value. Every word should be chosen deliberately. Let silence be the space in which your presence is felt. The effect is undeniable. People will remember you not just for what you say, but for how you carry yourself. Mystery is attractive because it suggests depth. People are drawn to what they do not fully understand. The less you reveal, the more they seek to uncover. This is true in leadership, relationships, and even self-respect. The ability to hold back, to not give away everything immediately, to remain composed and self-contained, is a mark of strength. This does not mean never speaking. It means understanding the power of selective silence. It means recognizing that sometimes saying nothing is more impactful than saying something. It means knowing that a well-placed pause can have more influence than 1,000 words. It means that confidence is not in how much you say, but in how little you need to say to be respected. If you want to develop this power, start small. In your next conversation, hold back. Do not rush to share everything about yourself. Do not explain more than is necessary. Let others do the talking while you listen with full attention. Watch how this shifts the dynamic. See how your silence changes the energy of the conversation. Notice how people become more interested in you when you give them less. True influence is not about dominating a conversation, but about owning your space within it. The world is filled with people desperate to be heard, but those who command real attention are the ones who do not need to fight for it. Their silence speaks for them. Silence is not weakness, it is not submission, it is power, it is wisdom. It is the mark of a person who is in control, not just of their words, but of their emotions, their presence, and ultimately their life. Today, we've uncovered 6 undeniable truths about the power of silence. Talking too much exposes your weaknesses. Mastering silence gives you control over your emotions. Speaking less makes others respect you more. Silence is a weapon in arguments and negotiations. Social media has made you forget the value of stillness. And finally, the mysterious, silent individual commands attention effortlessly. But knowledge without action is useless. The only way to transform yourself is through practice. So here's a challenge: the 7-day Stoic Silence Challenge. For the next 7 days, apply what you've learned. Each day, choose one principle of silence and observe how it changes the way people react to you. Speak only when necessary. Pause before answering. Resist the urge to fill silences. Listen more than you speak. And most importantly, reflect on how these small changes reshape your mind, your discipline, and your influence. I want to hear from you. Which lesson about silence resonated with you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you're taking on the challenge, let us know how it's affecting your mindset. If you found value in today's lesson, hit the like button, subscribe for more Stoic wisdom, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Because true wisdom isn't just learned, it's spread. I'll leave you with a final question to think about. Can you control your tongue, or does it control you? Let that question guide your actions. Stay strong, stay disciplined, and as always, stay stoic.